Good dawning to thee, friends, and welcome to Sonnet Sisters. I'm Jennifer, and this week I'm joined by the fantastic Emily Jenkins.
Hello!
Text practitioner at Shakespeare's Globe, and we're here for a fun time analysis of Shakespeare's sonnet number 28. So, sonnet 28. Did you know much about it before?
Absolutely nothing. I'd actually never read it before.
Perfect. Let's have a look at your initial reaction.
Right. How can I then return in happy plight, that am debarred the benefit of rest, when day's oppression is not eased by night, but day by night, and night by day oppressed? And each, though enemies to either's reign, do in consent shake hands to torture me, the one by toil, the other to complain how far I toil, still farther off from thee. I tell the day, to please him thou art bright, and dost him grace when clouds do blot the heaven. So flatter I the swart complexion night, when sparkling stars twire not the gilds thee even. That's tricky. But day doth daily draw my sorrows longer, and night doth nightly make grief's length seem stronger. Wow. Okay, so he's pretty depressed right now. Lots of can't sleep, panicking in the day. God, it's not cheery at all. Usually there's like a bit of hope at the end, but actually, I don't think there is at all.
Is that still how you feel about the sonnet on closer inspection? Does it feel like there's no hope?
Yeah. He's really moaning, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's just, like, you know, a lot of the time as one of these sonnets, and we'll get to talking about the end, but I mean, there's literally no hope or no kind of positive spin on it at the end. The whole sonnet is just, I feel rubbish by day, I feel rubbish by night, I'm missing you desperately, I'm oppressed by the fact that you're not here, everything sucks, I try and make it better, but everything sucks. And that's pretty much the whole sonnet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
not a cheery one, it's not a fun one, and he doesn't really go on too much of an emotional journey. It's just, it feels a bit like an emotional tantrum.
Absolutely. And it's funny, the last one I looked at, 26, I made the comment of like, oh, this is potentially beautiful, or it could be a bit wah-wah, which I feel this is quite wah-wah.
This is really wow, and this is really interesting, kind of the journey through the sonnets, because the first 18, he's so, as you guys will know, he's so in love with the young man, and you know is trying to convince him to have children and trying to convince him to pass on his beauty, and then it's clear through particularly the last one and the one before 26 that the young man has become absent in his life.
Yes.
And he's missing the young man desperately, and this seems to have got to the stage where he's kind of tormented by this kind of passion he has for this person, and it's really depressing.
Absolutely. But it is so interesting when you talk about the journey of the sonnets. That's something that I hadn't really considered before I went into this project. I had at one point in my life read every single sonnet just to find which ones popped out at me. The ones that didn't immediately mean something to me from reading it, I just kind of skimmed past, which a lot of these are. But then going in deeper, as you say, there is a really clear journey throughout the sonnets that's so interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the first 126 are all about the young man.
Yeah.
From 126 we get on to the Dark Lady.
Yeah.
And this is his kind of desperate phase. I mean, there's clearly something, they've fallen out, or the young man isn't near, something has happened, you know, and there are lots of theories about who that young man could be, and then as you guys will discover as you go further on, you know, the young man is having an affair with someone that Shakespeare loves, and or the young man is kind of having some kind of relationship with another poet, which is driving Shakespeare crazy. So the relationship, whatever it is not going well.
No.
And this is just the start.
Yeah.
So you guys are in for some fun sonnets coming up, guys.
Oh,
Yay!
gosh. Can't wait.
But this is stroppy teenager alone in his room going, oh, I'm so tormented by the love of you. Yeah.
Totally, that's how I feel about it. So whilst we're on the subject of Shakespeare feeling really victimised and tortured, there was one reaction that you had in your first reading that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay. I can't remember what it was, but yeah.
It was this one.
Do in consent shake hands to torture me, So they've come together and they're shaking hands and agreeing that both the day and the night, the sun and the moon, are going to torture Shakespeare. Sure.
Yeah, it felt like you're kind of dismissing a stroppy teenager, like, sure. So what was your thought at that moment?
Well, I suppose it's, you know, and Shakespeare uses this imagery a lot, the day and the night, and there's a lot of personification of day and night and other things, so it's absolutely valid, but it's that kind of vanity and ego and self-obsessed feeling that, you know, we all get a lot when we feel like everything is working against us, you know, and this idea that, you know, his love is so valuable and so important, and he's so important that the day and the night have got together to go, oh, we're going to punish you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you've got to have some kind of ego in order to think that you're important enough for the day and the night to have done that.
Absolutely.
It's hugely hyperbole, you know what I mean? Which is fine because it's a sonnet, but because he's so stroppy, I'm just a bit cynical about the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. Yeah, so I guess it's like literally the sun revolves around you and the moon, and they're talking about you and making decisions to ruin your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is what it is saying.
Yeah.
That is what it's saying. Well, at least that's how he's feel, which is a valid thing to feel. I'm not lessening Shakespeare's pain at this moment.
Sure.
Sure.
I didn't even mean to do that. So, let's look at a couple of words individually that you got very excited about in the initial reading.
Yes, I do that.
It's great, but I love it. There are all these, I mean, Shakespeare made up a bunch of words, and there's so many cool words that we don't use today. I'll try and put a link in the comments. There's a video somewhere of Ben Crystal.
Yeah, it'll be Ben Crystal and David.
Yeah, like reeling off, they reel off all of them, I think. Is it all? I mean, that would take a long time.
Yeah, no, they've done all of them.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I think there's a video somewhere, so I'll try and put the video in the comments. So these particular two words were...
So flatter I the swart-complexioned night. Swart. Oh, swart's a good word. When sparkling stars twire nice, not thou gilt'st the even.
Great, so swart and twire.
Yeah, they're good words, aren't they?
They are good words. Twire particularly, but I suppose I can't quantify why I think twire's a good word.
Do you know what? I've spent a lot of time talking about good words, and I think it's all about, I know this is a written form, but I now react to words quite physically and how they taste in the mouth.
Yeah.
You know, and swart. Do you know what I mean? In order to say it, you have to kind of move your mouth and kind of an O sound. There's a s and a t at the end.
Swart.
You know,
Swart.
There's some kind of quality which is swarthy, dark. You know, swart is not going to be happy and da-da-da.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it just kind of tasted good, and it's not a word that we use very often, so I get excited about those things. But yeah, it comes from swarthy, kind of dark.
Try saying these at home. Whenever we hit like weird words, try saying it, because I agree that that's a lot of what I enjoy about this stuff is how it feels in my mouth and how it feels to say, because they're words that we don't get to say these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So swart. And the other one is twire.
Twire, like twinkle.
Yeah.
Twinkle kind of comes from there. Twire.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Is there a link? You might not know. Is there a link between twire and twinkle?
I don't
etymologically?
know. I don't know, but I would bet one formed the other, because if you think about twire and the R written down going into the N, the R, if printed differently, could look like an N.
Oh yeah.
So it could have, the N and the RE could have kind of morphed, but that is absolutely 100% making that up and guessing.
Now there was a bit that tripped you up a few times.
So when sparkling stars twire not, thou gild'st the even. Okay, break it down. Don't gild the even. Now, even, like, syntactically, I don't think it's the word even that we would use now. I think it's probably evening, but because of the scansion of the line, he said even, because it kind of works better, but it's a bit difficult in the mouth.
Was it the way it was worded and speaking it that was tricky rather than the understanding?
Yeah, I understood what it meant.
Yeah.
But it was the speaking it. There were a lot of words in one line. When sparkling stars twire not, thou gilt'st the even.
Yeah.
And what happens is that, other than sparkling, it's a monosyllabic line.
Yes.
So every word other than sparkling has only one syllable. And this happens a lot in Shakespeare. What it means is, when you've got 10 syllables every line, if you have monosyllable words, it means that you have 10 whole words in a line as opposed to 6 or 7.
Yes.
So that makes it trickier, because if you rush, you kind of fall over yourself.
Yeah.
Because you need to get every single word out. The other thing is there's a little abbreviation, thou giltst the even.
Mm-hmm.
So they've removed the E at the end of the, and then we have even as a short thing for evening.
Right.
And until I read it out loud in a slightly different accent, I couldn't figure out the rhythm of it. And the other thing that is difficult is the version I was reading, which was a modern edited version.
Yeah.
Thou giltst the even, or the even. They put a D, very rightly, in the word gildst, because it comes from to gild. However, the quarto, which is the kind of original printed 1609 version of the sonnets,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't have the D in it, because they didn't have a formalised set of spelling. And if you don't have to pronounce the D, it's not as tricky.
Yeah, that's much easier.
Thou giltst the even. It's just easier.
Again, I suggested giving that a go. Just say gildst and then gilst.
Yeah. Gildst the
Gildst
even,
the even.
and gilst
gilst
the
the
even. It's just
Yeah,
easier.
absolutely.
Flows much better. And so my mouth was getting kind of tripped up over it.
Yeah.
And again, that's because I was reading it out loud, and obviously this is a written form.
Yeah.
But that made it tricky.
I'm glad you picked up as well on the even, because certainly when I read it through as well, and watching you read it through, I wasn't certain what that meant, the even. I was like, what do you mean gild it, like making them the same, or like,
Yeah.
So, like what? Yeah, and it makes complete sense. Yeah, even is a shortened version of evening.
Yes. But that's one of those things that you're just not going to know. You
Yeah.
know? It's one of those things that you read, and unless you've already done a lot of work on Shakespeare, there is no way you're going to know that even is a shortening of even.
Yeah.
Evening. Yeah, it's only because I've worked on it a lot that I know that, but I don't this is why they're tricky, because sometimes you're just not going to know.
Exactly, yeah. And it's fine not to know. There's
fine.
a very good reason to not know.
Yeah, there are lots of things I don't know.
Yeah. With that then, so the quatrain that was in was a bit tricky as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I messed up. I messed up massively. Well, not massively, but a little bit massively. So the first time I read it and I filmed it, I gave an interpretation of what I thought the lines meant on the first reading. I was going, well, I think it means this, but there's something that's not quite right about it meaning this. And what I first thought was that in the quatrain, can I read the quatrain?
Absolutely, yeah.
So in the quatrain, I tell the day to please him thou art bright, and dost him grace when clouds do blot the heaven. So flatter I the swart-complexioned night, when sparkling stars twire not thou giltst the even. See, it's tricky, right?
Still tricky.
Anyway, what threw me was I thought that he was saying, I tell the day to please him thou art bright. So I thought he was saying, I tell the day to please the day that the day is bright.
Yeah.
Right? Complimenting the day so the day stops torturing him.
Makes sense.
That's what I thought it meant.
Yeah.
But what threw me was the fact that he was calling the day thou. The day is a god. It's kind of more important than Shakespeare. And if someone was more important than you never, ever, ever called them thou.
Sure.
You would say you. Because thou is a word that Shakespeare uses either when you look down on someone, when you're rude to someone, or, just to make things complicated, when you are in love with someone and really close and intimate with them, right? Whereas you is more formal.
Yeah.
Or to a king, you would say you to a king.
Right, okay.
So, although the interpretation made sense, I was like, well, why is he calling the day thou? That's really rude and aggressive, particularly if you're trying to compliment the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I went back and looked at it the following morning. Actually, I looked at the quarto version, which had different punctuation, which helped.
Yeah.
And I've looked at the thou, and I was like, when Shakespeare talks about thou, he's usually talking about his love. So actually, I looked at it again, and the quarto version doesn't have a comma after I tell the day. So in the modern version, I tell the day to please him thou art bright.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas in the quarto, we don't have that. I tell the day to please him thou art bright. And actually, I realised that the thou is his love.
Yeah.
So he's telling the day to please the day that his love is bright. And dost him grace when clouds do blot the heavens. So he tells the day that even when you are cloudy, my love is so bright that he will do your job for you.
Yeah.
And then he does the same thing tonight and says, well, even when the stars aren't sparkling, my love will sparkle because he's so bright.
Yeah, which makes then complete sense of that quatrain. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what one little word can do. Because again, if
Yeah.
you didn't know that distinction between you and thou, you wouldn't pick up on that.
No.
And
No,
it's
of course.
that is the main clue to understanding that entire quatrain, was noticing, hang on a minute,
Yeah.
who's he talking about if it's thou?
Felt really weird. It felt really
Yeah.
weird. And the other thing, and the really important thing, is punctuation. And this is
Yeah.
something I work on all the time. So I work on printed versions of Shakespeare that are as close to Shakespeare as we can get.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, as they get printed and printed in new books, editors go, oh, well, I think if I put a comma there, it helps it make sense. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. It
Yeah.
breaks it up.
Yeah,
Because it's the way that person has heard it said in their head.
of course.
So I always go back and look at a quarto or a folio version,
Mm-hmm.
because it'll have punctuation that hopefully flows better. It might not be grammatically correct,
Sure.
but it'll connect with the meaning more.
Great. So that's a good tip to go back, if you can, to try and find original quarto versions and original folio versions, which will all be accessible online.
Yeah,
You can usually find them all.
absolutely. If you just type in Shakespeare folio version of,
Yeah,
loads of them.
to see what's different.
There's sometimes old weird spellings, and
Yeah.
S's look like F's and things like that, but just ignore it, it's fine.
It's all good. Don't
It's
worry
all good,
about it.
it's chill out, it's fine.
So going the complete opposite end of the spectrum now, from something that was tricky to work out to something that was particularly lovely to you and had you gushing over it a bit.
But day doth daily draw my sorrows longer. That's a really nice line. But day doth daily draw my sorrows longer. Can you hear how the plosive D, and it's all monosyllables, and when there's monosyllables it slows down the rhythm of the line.
Well, again, and this is coming from a place of being used to reading Shakespeare out loud.
Yes.
And it just, again, it tastes so good. Shakespeare loves alliteration. And what's really interesting about that line, it's near the end, but day doth daily draw my sorrows longer. So you've got that D, which kind of means that you're trying to force, because it's a plosive sound,
Yeah.
kind of explodes out of your mouth. You're pushing it out. But then all those vowels, day, daily, draw, are long vowels. And so it kind of reflects the feeling. The fact that day is being stretched out kind of on a rack, right? Day doth daily draw my sorrows longer. It's just a line of just really open, long vowel sounds, which has this stretching feeling,
Yeah.
which reflects what it's talking about.
Also reflecting the idea of torture as well, like you say, like
Yeah.
on a rack, stretching the words out like on a rack. And the word draw as well itself could be like drawing, like stretching, or it's also used in like hung, drawn and quarters.
Absolutely. When you
form of
pull
torture.
out the entrails from
Yeah.
inside the body, you're drawing them out.
Yeah. So I like that that's yet another little, I'm so tortured.
Yeah, he's still moaning. He's still moaning. Yeah,
What's that? He's still not happy yet?
It's fine. We've got quite a few more sonnets to go with this. This is just the beginning, guys.
Awesome. I love it. It's fun though, getting into like the tortured stuff. So talking about things getting slowed down, you mentioned that this continues within the final couplet as well, of this slowing down, because it's
Yeah.
monosyllabic, so you have to slow it down, giving a nice sort of writ,
Rallentando, slow down thing.
yeah, to the end of the sonnet, which makes sense within the context of the sonnet for sure. And yeah, it's nice to have that feeling of a certain rhythm going throughout it that slows down. But interestingly, that is something that will only come out if you are saying it aloud.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, was it a performative medium? Were the sonnets spoken aloud very much?
Well, they were more written to be printed and read.
Yeah.
So they weren't written to be spoken out loud as his plays obviously were. However, there was a fashion at the time. When you went to parties, there wasn't television, there wasn't music, so you'd play the piano or you'd stand up and recite something. So what people often did they would learn a sonnet. And
Right.
then when they went to a party, because they're that kind of fun guy, they would stand up, perform a sonnet, recite a sonnet.
Yeah.
And that was a form of entertainment. But I think even when you read it in your head, it does kind of, a lot of time when you read something in your head, you do kind of speak it as well. You can hear yourself saying it out loud. It doesn't feel the same, but I think it does still slow. And also Shakespeare was writing plays at the time, so one is going to inform the other.
Absolutely. But I guess it's going to be, what is this? The volume's going to be turned up on those types of things, those types of dynamics, if you say it out loud.
Absolutely.
Which is, again, why big advocate of saying this stuff out loud whenever you can, because you'll discover new things.
Definitely.
So, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to ask you about the sonnet
Right.
itself and breaking it down and whatnot. Have you had any ideas of how to put this into a performative context to film it?
Well, I think it's just, well, because nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
Nothing happens. I
Yeah.
think it is kind of like just a kind of love-sick teenager checking their phone repeatedly. You know, you're in bed, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you look at the phone, no, they haven't texted.
Yeah.
Look at 4 o'clock in the morning, you look at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're knackered the next day. I think it's just that cycle he's talking about, day, night, day, night. So finding a way maybe to tell that story.
Yeah.
And the fact that his day is oppressed by the absence, by lack of the person he loves. That's not a specific scene, but do you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that's what needs to be shown, you know. Or every time the phone rings, it's like, oh, it's not them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not them.
I really like that idea, and it's it makes sense of everything that we've been saying about him being tortured, and already referred to him as a stroppy teenager a couple of times, and that's really fun to play with within this sonnet as well, because a lot of them, I guess, I've been trying not to hold too much sort of reverence in terms of like it's a sonnet. Blah, blah, blah.
No,
It's like it's really fun to play with doing a sonnet sort of as a stroppy teenager. That's a super fun idea as a performer to do.
yeah, I think that's the way to go. And I think I think with all Shakespeare, never give him too much reverence. Do you know what I mean? He is great, but if you play something as being great and up there and kind of something that we all look up to, then there's no connection. Whereas actually we've all been through this, where we're just waiting for someone to get back to us and everything feels rubbish.
Yeah.
Or even like if you guys are stuck in school and you can see the clock behind your teacher's head, do you know what I mean? And how slow the clock handle moves until the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But for days and days and days on end.
And in terms of the reverence thing, it's also far more interesting to see a character who you don't expect to be super poetic,
Yeah.
who's just a normal person, and then they come out with this poetic line. That's going to catch your attention more than someone who's like,
Yeah.
I am already a perfect poet, thank you very much. You'll just be like, yeah, all right. It's far more interesting to see a normal person be poetic in their struggle.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Emily, for coming on.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking about Shakespeare, as you'll have known from the amount I speak. So I hope some of it made sense.
It absolutely did. And tune in over the weekend when you'll be able to see my performance of Sonnet 28 as a stroppy teenager, most probably. Until next time, rest you merry.